Out front now. He is the ranking member of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Senator, so much to ask you about, of course, but here we are talking about this crisis in the United States. You heard Senator Curtis, your colleague there, Republican. Now, though, many Democrats are calling for Secretary Noem's actual impeachment, those 100 House Democrats I just referred to. Are you one of them? Do you agree?
Listen, I think Kristi Noem should have never gotten the job in the first place. And if the president had any sense of responsibility, he would fire her. We'll see what comes over from the House. But remember, we've got an American city, a great American city, that has been basically occupied by 3,500 ICE agents, obviously not well trained, way more than the local police department in Minneapolis. Yep. And the idea that my Republican friends who maybe have finally found their voice, who used to be for local government and the 10th Amendment, are now seeing this federal takeover and not raising their voices or not being concerned about the fact that the state and local government is not able to, at least so far, do an investigation of these shootings. It's, you didn't think this stuff would happen in our country.
I mean, you know, we've heard Republicans now coming out and calling for investigations into Alex Pretti's shooting. And as you point out, we didn't hear that in many times, but even with Renee Nicole Good, right? We didn't hear that, right? That many of them were moved to back Trump. That in this case, it has been different in terms of the number thus far. I'm curious, Senator, as you talk to your Republican colleagues, do you think more will follow? Is this an important inflection point or not?
God, Aaron, I pray so, but I've been disappointed so many times. You know, I've been accused of being too bipartisan, and this last year has been heartbreaking to me, where I see on national security issues and time after time people not find their voices. You can see with your own eyes, if you watch this video, what happened to Mr. Pretti, you know, and the fact that he had a phone, not a gun, that he was surrounded. You know, and the idea that the administration is, you pointed out, and Senator Curtis made mention of this, they were calling him a terrorist before they knew who he was. This was an ICU nurse in the VA hospitals. Everything I've heard about him was he's a pretty remarkable man exercising his First Amendment rights, and now he's dead.
I also want to ask you, as you talk about the context of so much going on here, what is happening in Venezuela? You know, the acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, spoke out not long ago, just now, saying enough of foreign powers. And in that context, President Trump just told the New York Post that a secret new U.S. weapon was used in that operation that captured Maduro to shut down Venezuelan equipment. He said the Discombobulator, I'm not allowed to talk about it. They never got their rockets off. They had Russian and Chinese rockets, and they never got one off. We came in, they pressed buttons, and nothing worked. Now, a senior U.S. official tells us, Senator, that Trump may be conflating several capabilities into a single weapon that doesn't actually exist. So I'm just curious, I mean, what he described here obviously is quite significant. I mean, do you know of a weapon that either is or is casually referred to as the Discombobulator?
I have never heard that term before, although I have to acknowledge that this administration, unlike even the first Trump administration, has not shared with even the Gang of Eight the level of intelligence they should. But Aaron, if you look back, you know, it's been a pretty wild first 3.5 weeks of January. We've now got 20% of our Navy off the coast of Venezuela, blockading that country to keep them from dispersing oil. That's meant that when the Iranian people were rising up, we didn't have forces in the Middle East. When we should have been calling upon our European allies to put more pressure on the Iranian regime, Trump was threatening to break up NATO with his threats over Greenland. In between all this time, people may have forgotten, we've had a federal indictment brought against the chairman of the Federal Reserve, undermining the intelligence, undermining the independence of our monetary system. And at the same time, we've had this horrific federal takeover and these killings in Minnesota. You know what is happening? The people who are most reveling in this first few weeks of 2026 are Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. And I hope and pray that my Republican friends, in addition to John Curtis, will say, no more is our national security, our basic value system, not worth fighting for and protecting? Is there not anything that is more important than standing behind as sycophants to a president that is leading us terribly in the wrong direction?
So after the operation in Venezuela, the White House press secretary referred to what happened as basically a Venezuelan security guard is who they pointed to of this person, and they quoted the person saying, "It was like a very intense sound wave. Suddenly I felt like my head was exploding from the inside. We all started bleeding from the nose. Some were vomiting blood. We fell to the ground, unable to move. We couldn't even stand up after that sonic weapon or whatever it was." I'm just curious, Senator, does this fit with anything you know the United States has? If so, are you okay if they used it in this context? If not, what do you make of this description and the fact that President Trump is talking about it publicly?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to discuss, what may be classified information. But the description of the effects the Venezuelans mentioned there, or this name of Discombobulator, I've never heard, and if I haven't heard, that is a misuse of our classified system as part of the Gang of Eight. We are supposed to be the most trusted. This group has never leaked. I point out the fact that Marco Rubio was a member of that team, and he knows it never leaked. So I don't know what is being described, but I sure as hell want to find out.
Well, Senator Warner, we hope that you do, classified or not, and thank you very much.